All right. Well, I am so excited to have with me here today Jillian Greaves. Welcome, Jillian. Thank you so much for coming on to share your story about everything that's happened in your business in the last, I think 4 years since I officially started working with you. It's just been amazing to see the progress you've made.
Thank you. I can't believe it's been that long, but I'm so excited to be here and to chat about the journey.
Yeah. So I really just want everyone to get a chance to hear about your progress and your trajectory over those last 4 years, because when you first came to me, you had on paper a successful business, right? I think you were at about 100K of income for that business model that you were running. So a lot of people would say, oh my gosh, that's a huge success, amazing. But I feel like the way that you had set up your business was not very conducive to your own personal well-being and happiness. So tell me a little bit about, so we have to go back to like early 2020 at this point, but pre-COVID, if you can even remember that far. What was the original way that you had set up your nutrition business at that point?
Yeah, great question. And that was a very nice way of putting, I think, where I was at in business at that time. But yeah, in early 2020, I was in a space of being full-time in the private practice. I was accepting insurance. So I had an insurance-based business, which I think served me well starting out. But I was essentially in a place where I was working myself into the ground. There was zero work-life balance and just a lot of misalignment overall with what I wanted the business to look like, how I really wanted to help people and the impact I wanted to have. So I was ultimately seeing clients 5 days a week. I was doing admin work on the weekends. I was working all sorts of crazy hours, seeing clients at 7 a.m., seeing clients at 7 p.m., to bending over backwards to accommodate all things with clients. And was going session by session with clients, and with certain clients that worked great. With other clients, it was really frustrating because it felt like it was prolonging the progress and just creating barriers in itself. So it was exciting to start to see the revenue increase, but I knew that it wasn't sustainable. And I think something you had pointed out on even like our introductory call was you described it as sort of this like hamster wheel that I was on. And that like very deeply resonated with me because that's what it felt like. I was just go, 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 go. And things felt very chaotic.
Mm-hmm. And I'm guessing just knowing enough about you and your personal life, maybe that was something that might have flown for a bit at that stage of your life. But I know as you're entering another new phase, a very exciting phase of your life as a mom, I'm guessing either between the pregnancy and you'll find out soon what motherhood is like just living that way for more than, a few months, even a year, probably wasn't actually gonna be possible for you.
No, absolutely not. And my health was taking a toll. I could feel it. And my partner, who's tremendously supportive, would point it out often. And I was just stressed. I was carrying a really heavy stress load, even though I was so excited about the work I was doing, so proud of the work I was doing. But it didn't feel right. And I wanted to ultimately have a bigger impact and to help more women and to help them in even a better way. But I felt just stuck. Like I can't do more. So what do I do?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just curious. I don't know if you remember, because sometimes it's like, what was I even thinking when I was doing it that way? But is there anything you feel like was motivating you to work that hard? I mean, obviously, money could be a motivator. I just don't get the impression that for you, it was just like this pure chase of financial resources.
Yeah, I think it a lot of it was I I really love this work. Like I love helping women. It was amazing to see the impact I was having. And when women wanted more, I gave more. Or when new clients reached out, I'd find room for them in my schedule. And I think it's sort of that fine line where I think a lot of health professionals or kind of service-based professionals can relate to this in terms of we like helping people. And that's, being an empath, it's like sort of a strength, but it can also be a weakness in that I had like zero boundaries. I was also afraid to have boundaries in terms of, is that going to hurt my business? I think there was a lot of like mindset barriers for me that we identified really early on. I don't know if you remember, I was really resistant to even like fully owning kind of my niche, and was afraid of what if that means I'm going to turn all these other people away. And So there was a lot of mindset stuff wrapped up in that, in addition to, I think, just like loving the work, but not having the ability to sort of create structure and boundaries within that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know we call it a good problem to have a lot of people that want to work with you, but it can become extremely stressful when you're the kind of person that wants to help, wants to serve people well. And if you don't have boundaries around that, it's like literally you could be spending every single waking minute of your day just supporting clients, answering messages, getting on email, having those sessions and stuff. So nobody's going to set those boundaries for you. And if it becomes a problem, you're the only person that can change that, right? So let's walk people through some of the changes that you made to the way that you served your clients and the way that you sold your stuff, because you mentioned that you were taking insurance, single sessions, packing people in 7 a.m. I don't know if it's just because now I have a toddler that I'm like, oh my God, doing a client at 7 a.m. sounds like torture, but I think it still would have felt like torture before children. So that sounds pretty extreme as far as like 12-hour days of seeing clients and everything. What were some of the biggest and most important shifts that you made to your business in the beginning to really get you off that hamster wheel?
Yeah, so I think some of the biggest changes were, I think, first and foremost, creating a more structured one-on-one offer and really considering not just what people want in terms of, oh, they want these one-off sessions. For me as the expert, what do I know deeply, truly actually gets women the results that they're coming to me for? So we worked a lot on like creating sort of the ideal program and the structure and really thoughtfully building in everything that we knew women needed to get to where they wanted to go. So I think that was a huge, huge change. And that also led to actually transitioning out of accepting insurance and moving into private pay, which was a wildly like huge change for me for so many reasons. But I think initially there was a lot of fear there. There was also a lot of, and this isn't to say insurance is bad or there's not ways to accept insurance or do hybrid models that doesn't work for someone, but it ultimately wasn't working for me in my business anymore. And there was a lot of fear around that. There was also a lot of, I think, like guilt around not being accessible in that way to everyone. And I think ultimately creating this amazing program that I felt so confident in, really feeling just awesome about that offer. And then also realizing that if I was accepting private pay and charging more so what felt really appropriate, that would give me the ability to actually take time back to create other more accessible offers and things that could help more women. So I think transitioning out of insurance, creating that really thoughtful one-on-one offer was huge. Some other big things we did, we like systemized a lot. I switched what electronic medical record system I was using, and we just put like a lot of processes in place that took like a lot of the manual work away that I was doing, and a lot of like the things that were just taking up energy and brain space and weighing on me, which felt so good. And another thing we did was outsource. So I hired my first assistant and started to put trust in other people, but also trust in myself that I could actually be a leader and have a team and support. So I think those were some of the biggest things early on that were just really, really impactful and transformational in kind of shifting the trajectory of my business, really.
Yeah. Could you give a couple of examples of things that you were doing more manually that we ended up creating systems for?
Yeah. So even things like lab test processes for like lab test ordering, check-in forms. So there's better follow-up with clients before sessions and automating all of that. And things like symptom assessments. I'm trying to think. I feel like there was so many.
Well, it's been a while too. So
I
it's
know.
like you probably are like, what was I doing before I made these changes? Because I know a lot of the people we work with, they were doing like manually scheduling and rescheduling clients as an example.
I was doing that. So I was manually scheduling all of my clients and was like so afraid they weren't going to book appointments if I wasn't doing it. My whole application process, we totally revamped and automated a lot of that in terms of clients applying, approving applications, them having the responsibility to book an intro call, just like the onboarding, the offboarding process. So basically everything.
Well, I think sometimes people don't realize how much of an impact that can make on your workload and even the experience of the customer or the client. Because if they have to email you and have this email back and forth to even get an appointment rescheduled, I mean, how much of a pain in the butt is that? I don't like doing that when I have to do it for my own visit. So if you have that ability for somebody to just go in online and change their appointment or set something up, it's a better experience for them too. And it totally cuts down the work that you have to do to even manage your business. So I like some of those examples because I think both of us are at a stage in our business where it's almost like you can't even remember what it was like to have that or like to have $100 sessions or whatever. And it's one of these things where, for the people who are getting started or a little bit earlier on in their business, just knowing that some of these changes don't have to be monumental to make their life so much better and improve their business is really important. So with those changes, I feel like that was probably a lot of 2020 was making those changes and really revamping the way that you were serving your clients. If you're willing to share, what impact did that have on your results in your business, both for you and for the business overall?
Yeah, so the impact was huge. And I think clearly from a work-life balance perspective, it made a massive difference. We created my ideal schedule. I significantly pared down on the number of clients I was seeing, but I could give them really the attention that they and the support that they deserved. So absolutely, my clients were getting much better, more consistent outcomes, which was awesome within a more appropriate time frame. And then just with my personal life too, I actually started taking my full weekends off and would have dedicated admin days and dedicated client days. And just overall things felt so much better. That was just really a huge, huge thing that first year. Financially, there was a lot of change there as well. And I'll be totally transparent in case it's helpful for anyone. When I first signed up to work with you, it was a big investment. And I had just hit that point in my business where, okay, I had I think like one of my first 10K months. And that was not always the case in months prior. But when we had connected and talked through everything, I knew that this is really what I needed and wanted. And I remember talking to my husband too, because everything just happened with COVID, things were shutting down. There was like so much uncertainty. And then I was telling him that I wanted to make this big investment. And looking back, I cannot imagine what my life or business would look like had I not done that. It created really within that first year a lot of, again, just life balance, streamlining things with work. Financially, I think doubled my revenue in that first year. I think with 2020, I think I went from the previous year of like 100K or breaking 100K revenue to like 350 or 325.
Oh, wow.
In that first year, which was huge. And again, it was a situation where I also felt like I was working with more alignment overall, and women were just getting better results and having better experiences, which felt really amazing.
I mean, that's like, what else could you ask for, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like more money for you, more free time, and better results for your clients. I mean, it's like the trifecta of what everybody wants, I would feel like, in any service-based business. So, and it doesn't stop there because that was 2020, right? So what then transpired? I don't want to condense all of the last 4 years into like a blip as far as like what you've actually been able to do. But what was really the next phase of business growth for you? Because obviously, like you could have stayed there and that would have been probably great, right? And there wasn't necessarily this like, I have to change things and all of that. So I'm sure there was a little bit more of a different motivation to take things to the next level for you. But just tell me a little bit about where the business went after that point.
Yeah. And I think after that, that's where I felt like things were really just stable and flowing really well with the one-on-one offer and the private practice. And that's where I felt like I wanted to offer something else, to create something else that had an amazing impact for women, but was maybe at a more accessible price point. So again, I mentioned with transitioning out of insurance, I wanted there to be options for people based on needs and finances and all of these offers to really help women in a big way. And I will say too, just for my enjoyment, I also wanted to do something different. And I love one-on-one, but I wanted variety and I wanted to just, switch it up for myself too. So that led us to creating my first group program, which was a 12-week PCOS group program. And that was a huge, huge change in terms of having that offer in my business. And that's something that I would run periodically in terms of launching and cohorts. There was, I don't know if you remember too, there was a lot that went into developing that program. And again, a lot of sort of mindset work, even just around how are people going to get results if I'm not like in the weeds, helping them and doing all the one-on-one. So you had obviously a lot of processes and a method in place for being able to actually like tease out everything from one-on-one to put it into like this really effective methodical group program that is now a huge part of my business as well, that women get amazing results from. And I don't want to say I was surprised, but it was almost like running it the first couple times, there was a lot of nerves around, are women going to get the results? You know, there's more responsibility on them when I'm not managing every piece of this. And the way we set it up was just incredible. And I felt so good about it from the beginning. There's definitely been evolution and modifications on an ongoing basis, but that was a huge next step, is having that group program offering.
Yeah. And with the group program, there was some level of personalization as part of it, right?
Yes. Yeah. So we offer Dutch hormone testing. We had it built in initially for all women in the group program, and then eventually had it as like an optional add-on, since some women needed it, some women didn't. But there was that piece where people could get access to lab testing and a personalized protocol, which I loved to be able to offer as just sort of like another layer for women that wanted that support. There were also women that would go through the group without the testing, but they would get access to live calls, and there were other forms of support, community and things like that in the group program. So yeah.
And I think it's interesting. A lot of people, and I've been here too, and I know it sounds like you were here as well, where it's like you have this belief that the only way you can help people is by working with them individually. Especially you and I both have a functional medicine background, and it's very much like root cause and individual everything, and everything's got to be custom. And I'm not saying that there isn't room for that, or there aren't situations where that is possibly true, but I think people overestimate how much of that is actually true. And they almost make it so that they're so afraid to try creating, whether it's a hybrid that doesn't have just one-on-one sessions, or if it's a group program. I mean, the way you were doing it was almost like halfway between a hybrid and a group program if there was testing and stuff, because they are getting some level of individual information. But I think if your belief is that the only way you can serve people is strictly through one-on-one sessions, then that really limits what you are able to do, both from a business perspective, financial perspective, as well as a impact perspective, because I'm assuming you're able to help way, way, way more women when they come into that group program than if you had to serve all of those clients in a one-on-one format for every single thing you were helping them with.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And what I will share too is that women that we work with that have PCOS, that we work with one-on-one, that have PCOS, we also will give them access to the group program. And working with them one-on-one is such a different experience than when we're working with women that don't have PCOS, where we don't have that complementary program that they can go through alongside the one-on-one. So currently I'm actually in the process of sort of creating something similar that will serve more of the women that we work with in terms of the women's health focus, to essentially have more of that hybrid model, because I think we've just seen the value in women being able to learn and access resources outside of one-on-one sessions, and then being able to like come into one-on-one sessions and focus on coaching and things like that. But definitely, I think took me a long time to get there, in terms of, especially weirdly with like private pay and feeling like, oh, I have to be the one to provide everything. But what I've realized is that clients actually want that. They like to have access to those things outside of one-on-one sessions. And I do think it just really, elevates the entire experience. So yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine it's not a value add for most people to have on-demand resources and education that they can get outside of the sessions, because how many of us remember when we're working with a one-on-one provider? How many of us remember even like 80% of what was talked about in that session, right? And so if you're relying on a one-on-one session to get all of the information and education you need, not only is that inefficient for the practitioner or the coach, but it's also actually difficult for the client to really get the full benefit because they might be like, wait, what did she say about that? I don't remember. Did I write it down in my notes? Did she write it down in her notes? And so if you have your foundational, everybody needs to know this kind of stuff available to somebody to watch outside of those sessions, not only does it help them actually get more out of the experience and really have that space to learn and absorb what you want them to understand, but it also makes the sessions themselves so much more effective because you're not covering something that they could have watched in a 20-minute video with 20 minutes of your 45-minute session, right?
Yeah.
So I think, I'm a very strong believer in, even if you're primarily doing one-on-one, having some sort of resources, support, education, anything you can do that's on demand for a client. I think it just adds so much value to what you're selling, and it makes it actually more effective for people. I really don't see any sort of downside to offering that to people as part of what they're paying for.
I completely agree. And I think we sometimes, or my opinion is like, we sometimes like underestimate our clients too. And even with like what we were talking about with systemizing certain things early on in business or putting the responsibility on the client to book appointments, I think a lot of these things really not only elevate the client experience, but really encourage clients to be like active participants in the process. And they're more engaged. They're more engaged in session. They're doing things outside of session. And I think sometimes we, want to take all the responsibility away from them. But I actually think putting more responsibility on the client and getting that active participation is like a win-win for everyone.
Mm-hmm. So with this addition of the group program, and I think maybe the same year you were also adding your mini course that you had as almost like a little entry.
Yes.
I think we used to call it like a small bite
Yep.
opportunity for people to get started and to get a sense for how you could help them before they would potentially move into either one-on-one or the full group program. What did those changes do for you and your business?
Yeah, so that was a really helpful change because even with the group program being much more affordable than one-on-one, it was still a higher ticket group program. And we would get hesitation from women about investing X amount even in the group program. And the mini course was a mini nutrition PCOS course, just covered nutrition foundations. And it was a really low cost offer, but a lot of value in it and just a great starting point for women to see some good progress and to just see if they like what I do with sort of low risk. And so it became a great funnel for women into the group program and into one-on-one. So that was kind of a really big piece of things too, in terms of building out like all of these offers and like how they fit together and how one would lead to the next if someone was interested in more support beyond that. So it was a really nice like access point for bringing women into the business.
Mm-hmm. And was your revenue affected by those changes in any substantial way?
By the mini course.
Just by having the one-to-many offers, the ones that kind of expanded beyond that one-on-one offer.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll share typically with the group program, we would cap it at a certain number based on offering Dutch testing and things like that. But typically our launches, and we would run the program like 3 times a year, the PCOS group program. Typically the launches were ranging anywhere from like 30 to 40K launches. And then the mini course pretty consistently would bring in anywhere from like 3,000 to 5,000 in revenue monthly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And originally, I think in like the first month when we launched it, or the first 2 months, there was, because we had a wait list for it, like you had suggested while building it and gave people a discount. I think it was like 15K or something from like the sale of that like small mini course right off the bat. And then it was something we promoted monthly from there.
Cool. Yeah, I don't know if I remembered that specific consistent revenue from that offer. I guess maybe we probably were more focused on the group launches and everything. And I don't remember even asking you about that. So that's really great. I mean, just to be able to have that consistent baseline coming in, I mean, that could cover a full-time employee's salary to be
Yeah.
working for you. So, okay. So I think maybe we're like getting into, I don't want to call it phase 3. I feel like it's like the current phase you're in with your business. You had made these offers, you were launching them. Tell me about the last like year to 2 years, so like 23, 24. I know we're only like halfway through 2024 at this point, but what has changed? What have you done differently? I feel like I've seen you hiring people. Like, where are you at now with your business? I know it's like this isn't the end line for you, but I just want to get like the current snapshot.
Yeah. So, definitely some big change over the last couple years. And one thing that I had worked on with you was the hiring and expanding of my actual like practitioner team. So I have two incredible full-time dietitians that work for me now. And that was really scary in terms of like hiring a practitioner and just sort of like the imposter syndrome that pops up there and just feeling overwhelmed with like how to create the right environment and systems and all of that for them. So so hiring has been a big focus in training practitioners. And I can absolutely say at this point, I wish I did that sooner, like I could probably say for a lot of things, but that's really been a big focus. And I think also shifting more so towards mentorship with practitioners, but also like what you talk about a lot in terms of working on the business versus in the business. I've spent a long time working in the business and I'm still working in the business, but a bigger priority in the last couple of years has been taking on more of a leadership role and working more so on the business, which has been really fun, honestly, and not something that I thought I would enjoy as much as I do. But so bringing the practitioners on board was really huge. And yeah, I would say that's been the biggest focus the last couple of years. My husband is also full-time in the business now, which is super exciting, doing all things operations, which is really cool. And now we're in a place of planning for maternity leave, which is really exciting. And also, I think the cool thing is that I'm not worried about it, which I definitely couldn't have said a couple years ago, where yes, there's going to be challenges and things are going to change, but with where the business is at, I feel just really solid about being able to like actually take a real maternity leave and to take care of myself and my family and to have the business continue to operate and do amazing things while I'm on leave. And also just thinking about now too, when I do come back, what's next in terms of what we want to do, the impact we want to have. So I feel like I'm just in a place of feeling really excited about the business and continuing to sort of like evolve and expand and have like a lot of stability and longevity.
That's amazing. And I mean, if I remember, we talked about what your life looked like 7 to 7 weekends, all of that with the original business model that you were running. What does it look like now, just as like a snapshot of your daily or weekly life?
So different. So I do still see clients, but I don't see clients before or have any calls before 10 a.m. or after 5 p.m. And I see clients 1.5 days a week at this point, which is again wild. I used to have upwards of almost 30 client appointments in a week, which is, I don't even know how I did that. But yeah, 1.5 client days per week. And then I have full admin days, creative days, social media days. And then I have days where I have all my internal meetings with my dietitian team, my assistant, my husband, our operations guy. So yeah, things look very different now.
Mm-hmm. How many hours do you think you're working a week on average?
So I would say anywhere from, I still work, I definitely don't work more than a 40-hour week.
Yeah.
But what I will say, it's funny, I was just having this conversation with someone else, is I could absolutely work less than I do right now in terms of I tend to work about a 40-hour week. I love work. Like I love what I do so much that it's, I think, important for me to like have those boundaries. But I will say what I do that is different is like take a half day on Friday and go to the beach. And I'm able to do that because I don't have calls on Fridays. And that's just sort of like a wrap up day from the week. Sometimes I'll choose to work longer. Sometimes I'll work less. So there's just a lot more like flex time built in there, which feels
Mm-hmm.
really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm going to want to hear an update after you have your baby, because I feel like I remember the days when it was like, I just love this and I have nothing
Yeah.
better to do with my time. So I might as well work. So I'll have to get back in touch with you to hear in several months, like, do you still want to work
Yeah.
40 hours
Yeah.
a week?
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
Well, in order to wrap things up, this has been, I personally, I've been really enjoying just hearing all of the things that you've accomplished and all the growth you've had in a pretty short period of time. I mean, I know 4 years doesn't sound like a short period of time, but that's pretty uh, exponential growth and change as far as your business model and revenue and all of that. And so, what would you what would you say to somebody? Let's talk to pandemic or let's say pre-pandemic because I feel like pandemic Jillian might have been freaked out about a little more than just her business. But let's say like February 2020 Jillian,
Yeah.
what would you say to somebody who knows they want more for their life, knows they want more for their business, but is stuck in that I'm selling one-on-one sessions, I'm taking insurance, I'm selling cheap packages because I'm afraid to raise my prices. I want to be accessible. I don't want to I don't want to have a high ticket program because I who would buy high ticket from me, like all of those things that I'm guessing you had a thought about at
Oh
some
yeah.
point. What would you say to that person to encourage them to do something different or to get out of their comfort zone or to learn
Yeah.
a different way of running their business?
Oh man, I think first and foremost, I would say don't be afraid to invest in yourself and your business and getting help and getting in the room with someone and people that have done what you want to do and are doing what you want to do single-handedly. It's been the best thing I did in my business. And like I said, I can't imagine where things would be. So I think really not being afraid to bet on yourself to make that investment, I think would be my biggest advice. And also just, I guess I would acknowledge that everything you're feeling and all of those fears are so normal. Like everyone goes through that. I relate to that so deeply. Again, it wasn't that long ago. I think something I've realized though, as I've taken those leaps and made those investments and committed to making bigger changes is that oftentimes fear and these limiting beliefs pop up more so and get a lot louder when I'm on the verge of doing something really big and exciting and making a really impactful change. What I've also realized too is that if you make a change and it doesn't work out, what's the worst that can happen, right? You make an adjustment and go in a different direction. So I think putting less of an emphasis on a change being the be all end all, it's like, let's try it and see what happens and what's the worst case scenario there.
I feel like that's literally the nightmare of dietitians to think that way.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Like letting go of control of something or
or
not know. Yeah.
yeah, or saying like, I'm gonna just try it and see what happens. Like I feel like so Jillian and I are both dietitians, and I mostly started working with dietitians before I expanded to other types of coaches and practitioners. But I feel like it was like pounded into our heads in school that like you follow the rules, you do what you're told, you don't try things. Like God forbid you try something with a client and it doesn't work well, right? So I think there is
Yep.
that baked in fear of experimentation. If depending on what your education is, depending on where you came from, if you're a dietitian like us, there's a it's like pretty much anything you got taught as far as how to follow rules as a dietitian needs to be totally thrown out the window if
Yes.
you're going to be successful in entrepreneurship.
Yes. And to build on that, which is easier said than done, but just the people pleasing tendencies. Oh my, I feel like we talked about that was a never ending conversation. And again, I think some of the greatest changes we made were related to not just overgiving, doing what other people want or what would please other people. And I've seen time and time again when, I make changes and make decisions from the place of not having an offer just because someone said they want it and actually creating like a thoughtful offer based on like my expertise and what I know is going to help people. The impact is profound, and it also just leads to like bringing more of the right people into the business, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I think that's something that really stands out to me from what you shared today is this big transition in your approach to business where I think starting your business and earlier on when we were working together, you really just were at the whim of your patients and clients. And that can feel very much like I'm serving them, I'm giving them what they want. And there is that huge transition that happens and did happen for you where you're able to really be in your expertise as the practitioner and the business owner to say, no, this is what's best for people and this is what we're doing. And I think that is such a huge mindset change. That's a big identity change. That's a big, like, just how you're showing up in your business change that It's, I'm sure, not something that happened overnight, but I would imagine it's made a humongous difference in not only the growth of your business and the way that you're actually being able to help people, but even just probably your mental well-being as
Oh
the
my
business
gosh.
owner. Because I think a lot of people really do not even understand how much they are letting other people dictate the decisions they make, and they're not actually owning their expertise and not actually making decisions from a place of, I can make a decision that's best for everybody, including myself. And it doesn't mean that I just have to do what everybody's asking me to do anytime they ask me to do it.
Yeah, 100%. And it's hard to make that shift, but even using the example of getting more no's from clients, which was a fear. Again, that led to more of the right clients coming into the business, and also led to a lot of those no's coming back 6 months or a year later and being so ready to work with me at that time, versus saying yes to everything, making all the accommodations, and then someone not having the best experience or having exactly what they need to achieve those results. So yeah, I think that's a tough one, but when you, I think, shift and start to make decisions from that place, it's just very, very powerful. So
Mm-hmm. Well, this has been so fun for me. I just love seeing what you're doing and seeing how you're growing and everything. It's like, I know I didn't play this massive, massive role, but it's like it really does make me just feel so, I don't want to say proud because it's like a little condescending to be like, I'm so proud of you, Jillian, but it's just like so cool to see how much you've grown, how much you've changed, how you've been so committed to the whole process, and you've gone through really tough stuff. You've overcome a lot of challenges. I know some of the conversations we've had about some of the really terrible experiences you've had as an entrepreneur. And it's just so inspiring, even for me, to see everything that you've accomplished and just the trajectory that you're on. And it couldn't have happened to a nicer person and a more deserving person.
oh
So
my gosh.
I'm really just so stoked for where you're going and can't wait to see you bring a little one into the mix and to see what the next phase of life looks like for you.
Thank you. I so appreciate that. And I think it is very more than fair to say you played an integral role in that. And it's funny, in a friend of ours, another client of Laura's, our friend Abby, we talk about it all the time. We reference things from our work with you all the time. And yeah, we just really appreciate what you're doing, what you've done for us and what you're doing for people in the online entrepreneur space.
Amazing. Well, thank you for that. And is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up? No pressure. I just want to make sure you feel complete with your
No,
share.
I think that's it. I think I shared and probably overshared. So
No such thing. We love oversharing. So, well, thank you so much, Jillian. Really appreciate your openness. And I know everyone that's listening is hopefully as inspired as I am to go kick some entrepreneurial butt and to go take their business to the next level. And just really appreciate you being willing to come on here and share your inspiring story.
Of course. Thank you.